And we're back with an all-new episode of Keep It. I'm Ira Madison III.
I'm Louis Fertel, and I rarely get to say this, and I'm excited to say it. But the girls are fighting. And the girls I'm talking about, and I can't believe I'm saying this, are apparently Nicole Kidman and Salma Hayek. What is happening, God?
Okay, so first of all, I just learned this tea literally minutes before we were recording.
It's piping hot. It's on the stove. The kettle is screaming.
It's like network over here.
Yeah.
But according to a newly surfaced video at the Balenciaga show on September 30th, Nicole Kidman and Salma Hayek were exchanging words while posing for paparazzi photos. In it, Nicole Kidman is seen standing face to face with Salma, saying something to her. The internet believes that she was saying, "Don't touch me."
And they could parse that through the thick fog in an Australian accent, which, as you know, is impenetrable.
Also, Katy Perry is next to them.
Oh, God. So there's just there's no hope for anybody in this situation. Well, of course, when I heard about this situation, the first thing I thought was, well, this obviously stems back to the 2002 Best Actress race, where they were up against each other, and Nicole won for The Hours, and Salma didn't for Frida. But I don't know what they could be dredging up. They're both in biopics, both probably equally well received. I assume Nicole was just having a tense moment in front of paparazzi, and Salma was like, stand up straight, girl, you're 11'4".
Yeah, I mean, they do go back and take photos together. So it's not like they have permanent beef. And I think that whenever the internet does lip reading, I'm using quotes for people listening. Whenever the internet does lip reading, it's never real. It's always giving wacky scene in a spy movie where someone is doing lip reading. It's like a Melissa McCarthy in Spy scene, okay? It's not real lip reading. I don't think that we're actually witnessing Nicole Kidman shouting, "Don't touch me."
She screams. She's never been in front of paparazzi before. She's been on my mind, period, because of the movie Babygirl, which we both have seen in advance. And I have to say, it's maybe her best movie performance in a few years. I mean, I love Nicole Kidman in this movie, even though I will say ultimately, it's a pretty standard affair movie, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Babygirl. It is a ride. Let's just say that.
Right.
I was gagging from the first shot of the movie, not even the first shot, from the opening credits. It starts over black. Whenever a film starts over black and you hear sounds before the film even starts, you just hear moaning. That's how the movie starts. I knew we were in for something.
Right. No, the erotic thriller is back. Yes.
And yeah, it was a ride. From the minute Nicole is strapped in, she is really giving you. A lot of people have been comparing it to Eyes Wide Shut, I guess, because it is sexual in nature. But I don't know. She feels tapped in a way that I haven't seen maybe since Birth or Dogville. It's giving that kind of performance where she feels intensely vulnerable.
It's an at wit's end kind of performance. Like, there's a lot of sexual desperation there, and to feel her, vulnerable is one word for it, but just exasperated, is like kind of a mode we rarely see from Nicole Kidman in movies. There's not much in the way of composure going on here, even though she's the CEO of a major company. Honestly, the affair that they have, and we're talking about her and Harris Dickinson, he is, of course, bone-chillingly hot in this movie. I don't know if you've gathered this from the previews, but their chemistry is the reason to see the movie. Where I'm going to object to the movie is, unfortunately, when it comes to an affair movie, what happens once they get caught or once the comeuppance happens, something interesting has to occur, and I feel like that's where the movie doesn't give you anything. Like, she's married to Antonio Banderas, which, by the way, I did not know until I went and fucking saw the movie. And screen legend Antonio Banderas is in this. Once he finds out about the affair, I don't know that it really knows what to do with itself. But if you're looking for a hot, steamy, again, erotic thriller, something that reminds you of my favorite erotic thriller, Damage, with Jeremy Irons and Juliette Binoche, that, as we know, she hated making, according to our interview with Juliette Binoche on Keep It. You see it for that reason. It does recall that era of film.
if you get anything from this as well, Harris Dickinson, if this is your first introduction to him, Triangle of Sadness, obviously, but revisit Beach Rats, where he is the hottest you've ever seen. And Antonio Banderas, he is maybe the hottest in
Law of Desire.
Films.
Law of
Desire,
yeah.
Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. Like, revisit the older Almodovar films where you will see him young, being sort of a evil, tortured, gay man, bisexual man. Those are the movies that you want to see Antonio Banderas in. He gives a great performance in Babygirl, but like you said, once it gets there, it sort of falls apart. To me, it feels similar to her previous film, Bodies, 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 which also has a great premise, is a fun ride, and then the third act is just vibes to me.
Yes, yeah. Well, also, it's like, I feel like movies in this genre have a hard time knowing what to do once you get to that part. Like, I was thinking of Unfaithful, which is a great movie with Diane Lane, also from the 2002 Best Actress race. How strange.
I didn't know that she was nominated that year against them. I also would have given my girl Diane Lane the Oscar that year. Even though Nicole Kidman is fantastic in The Hours, that is an all-time film performance.
Oh, excuse me. When Diane Lane is on the subway after the first time she gets that D, the vapors that are coming across this woman are unlike anything you have seen in a film. She's like winded and also euphoric and sad and at wit's end, which is going to be the theme of this episode, and just intriguing. Like, Diane Lane, we had never seen her like that before. You know, former child actress, who, by the way, who's treated like she's at the end of her livelihood in this movie, even though I'm sure she is 34 years old or whatever.
The maybe best sex scene I've ever seen in a film still is her and Olivia Martinez in the hallway of their apartment building. The hottest scene I have ever seen. And when you talk about an erotic thriller that knows how to stick the landing in a third act, when Richard Gere discovers the affair, I'm not going to spoil it in case there are people who have not seen this film and are intrigued by us discussing it and want to go and watch it. But when Richard Gere discovers the affair in the third act, what happens next, that's how you do an erotic thriller.
I'll say this, though. I like what happens between him and another character in the movie. The last 5 minutes or whatever, I mean, it goes into zany zone. I mean, it just... you're
Unfaithful?
Yes. Though I will say, something that movie has going for it is that it's directed by Adrian Lyne. So it has the feel of a Fatal Attraction, you know, which is basically an entirely bygone era of movie. So you get this kind of fun throwback quality when you watch it, too, just of like... chic, apartment set, men and women are crazy sex gremlins kind of vibe, you know. So really cherish that.
Where has he been?
Yeah, what are we doing?
I did not watch the Ben Affleck, Ana de Armas film Deep Water, but I just know it wasn't good in my soul.
Well, also it's like, because that would be the movie we would race to see, right? Like, we would know, our synapses would be firing for this if it were great.
Yeah, that weird pandemic romance was not sending anybody running to the theaters. Okay.
No, I do think in retrospect we should give her Kennedy Center honors alone for her role in No Time to Die, which was absolutely the only good thing about that movie.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad we had this chance to revisit the 2002.
Yeah, but Julianne Moore and Far From Heaven, a lot going on that year. We'll get into it. How exciting.
With Saturday night in theaters and SNL starting its 50th season, we've decided to take a look back at the best performers, musical guests, and spin-offs to ever come out of Primetime's longest-running sketch show. But first, the Ariana Grande episode. Shall we do it?
They really just leaned into her. They said, go ahead, do every impression in your book. We'll write around that. And why not? You know what I mean? Because that's how you get sketches like the greatest sketch of all time, Lucy Lawless and Stevie Nicks' Fajita Roundup. Speaking of the musical guest from this episode, which had Stevie Nicks doing an interesting and political new song, and then she also did Edge of 17, which was awesome to see.
Yeah, let's just talk about Stevie Nicks first.
Please.
My girl.
Yeah.
I love her.
Oh, what's about to happen?
The Lighthouse.
I thought it was okay.
I'm gonna stick with the Robert Pattinson film. All right.
Willem Dafoe with his huge thighs in that movie.
Weirdly enough, I had heard this song before. I was at my friend Brad's place, and he is a big Stevie Nicks fan. Weirdly, he is so not up on pop culture at all, but the things that he does know, he knows. And so he knew that there was a new Stevie Nicks song out before I did. And he was like, you got to listen to the Stevie Nicks song. And he was playing it. And he was like, I don't know why Stevie Nicks released this song. And I was doing the Google work. And I said, oh, she's appearing on SNL. And then I looked up the lyrics. And I was like, oh, this is about, women's reproductive rights. And that makes sense because the song is very Hillary Clinton running for president era sounding.
Yeah, it's like Take Your Power Back is the vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very Mark Ruffalo, Olivia Wilde chanting in the streets, It's
By the way,
kind of song.
I physically cannot handle seeing that video again. So if you could make sure whoever you are on Twitter doesn't post that so that I see it, I can't look at it. And I enjoy them both as actors.
Funny.
So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other than that, and I believe like a little technical difficulty, it was fine. I at least she didn't do a jig.
True. I said this also. I mean, like the woman truly is dressed still as if it is 1977, except it looks more appropriate now. Like she just insisted on this one mode of fashion for 40 years, and it still looks great. It's very Diane Keaton. So much appreciated on that front too.
Honestly, I don't want to give that man any credit, and by that man I mean Ryan Murphy, but I will say that a lot of that probably has to do with Coven.
Oh, you think Coven empowered her to stay in this mode of, Helena Bonham Cartery, shall we say?
Well, I think not empowered her so much as made it more palatable to mainstream culture. And I also think gave us a resurgence of Stevie Nicks in culture.
Oh, that's probably true. No, I mean, a lot of people, that's their primary reference for her now. If they're like under the age of 25 and not a friend of mine, that is their primary Stevie Nicks reference. Which,
by the way, remember when he used to do that? Remember when he was good for things like giving us, bringing back old divas and giving them second careers?
I need him to get over the Kim Kardashian thing that's going through his brain right now. I don't know. That's given the RFK brainworm. I don't know what happened there, but
she doesn't need a second life. She doesn't need to like rejuvenate her career. She's already got hers going on right now, and we don't need him excavating murders from the 90s. I get that Cooper boy is very hot.
Sure.
And he was talking about his dick on Watch What Happens Live this week. Good for him. I am tired of seeing that boy everywhere.
Well, it's just like I said last week, I think that series in general is just not it. It just feels very lurid and ridiculous. But anyway, back to SNL and Ariana Grande. I thought she gave a very charming, accomplished performance. Did I think it was hilarious? I would describe it as just short of hilarious, but very amusing. I think the best sketch was where she played Celine Dion, promoting the Octagon, promoting UFC. I love the concept just in general. That said, her Celine impression, a little more Shakira to me than Celine.
Yeah. So the way that I consume Saturday Night Live these days, I feel like is the way most people consume it. Clips come to me.
Or they don't.
When people are like, oh, this is funny. Then I end up watching them. Do I sit down and watch Saturday Night Live the night it's on or even the next morning after it's aired? I do not.
Every once in a while I do, if I'm like extra excited for somebody. But generally speaking, you're right. It's like Sunday morning on Twitter and whatever floats my way, aside from whatever Nazi propaganda is on X, I watch.
I did really enjoy the sketch where she was fighting with Bowen.
Yes. I'll also, of course, obviously pair them together, whatever. They're good friends and seem to have good chemistry on screen. What did you think of the scene where she and Chloe Fineman were doing dueling Jennifer Coolidge impressions, and then Dana Carvey approached with his own Jennifer Coolidge impression? Or did you see it?
I did see it. It is always great to see Dana Carvey.
Well, we're going to get into him during this conversation because I think at this point, inarguably, he is the greatest SNL cast member of all time.
But I will say that I want a moratorium on Jennifer Coolidge impersonations.
Right. She got the 2 Emmys for that show. We have the 3 sound bites from the movies we remember of hers. We have now repeated them ad nauseum, and now it feels like she's a little bit the enemy. And I believe we have done that, not her, to us as a culture.
Right. Even Angela Murray from this season of Big Brother, she had a Jennifer Coolidge impersonation that she keeps being asked to do, and I needed to stop.
Just in general, Angela should stop. I don't know if you're familiar with her as a character. Finally, they wrapped up that season. I'm sorry, what a flop season. I know some people loved it. I had to jump out eventually.
I mean, I love Chelsea as a winner, though.
I'm glad she won because there's some level of accomplishment there because it was shaping up that it could have been anybody else in that house who sucked. Anyway, back to SNL.
I will say, lastly, about this episode, though, I really enjoyed the Family Feud sketch.
The cold open where instead of a debate, they decided that the candidates would face off in an episode of Family Feud where it's Trump and Don Jr. and Bowen as J.D. Vance face off against Kamala Harris, who's played by Maya Rudolph, of course, Jim Gaffigan as Tim Walz, and the Dem quotient, yes. And Joe Biden, of course, Dana Carvey was there too.
What do you have in your glove compartment? And then Kamala going into, well, as you know, I come from a middle-class family. That made me laugh. And then the Glock in my glove compartment. And then what's the second answer? Another gun? That was funny to me.
Very
so
true. Yes.
The height of the episode, unfortunately, was the cold open.
Yes, and then, of course, you got Dana Carvey doing his Biden impression. I have to say, I'm thankful for it because they really picked the exact right person to do this impression. He had this loaded anyway. When he guest hosted Jimmy Kimmel last year, he was doing a Biden impression that was all of this. Like he generated all of this himself. But it reminds me of when he used to do his George H.W. Bush impression, which was so funny, even though the source material is so dry and so not ripe for characterization that you really need a tactician like him to bring out anything from him. And I think Joe Biden's similar. I mean, like you can play on the fact that he's old and a little bit dotty, but there's not really much there elsewhere. You know, he's somebody who reads the teleprompter. You know what I'm saying? Like there's not much to latch onto in terms of Second City-like comedy. But Dana Carvey is fabulous at that. I have been fascinated recently with the beginning of the 1986-1987 SNL season, which is following this legendary bad season they had, where they had lots of odds and ends cast members. Like, that's when Robert Downey Jr. was there. That's when Anthony Michael Hall was a cast member, and it just didn't work. And the season begins with a whole bunch of new cast members like Dana Carvey, Phil Hartman, Victoria Jackson, etc. And Madonna, who started the previous season as the first host, began this season telling viewers that the last season was a bad, bad dream. Literally being like on air, she said, we sucked. And now we're coming back and the show is different. And on this episode, you got Dana Carvey, the first host was Sigourney Weaver. You got him giving you Church Lady, the chopping broccoli piano segment. Immediately the show was off and running because he was there. And I don't think anybody has turned a television show around like Dana Carvey.
I think that those people are obviously people that I think are fantastic people added to the SNL repertoire. I mean, Phil Hartman, obviously. Fantastic on SNL, fantastic on The Simpsons.
On News Radio, yes.
I mean, News Radio, one of my favorite television shows ever. That, I feel like, isn't streaming, and I feel like should, because I feel like I need Gen Z to discover News Radio.
It's the one version of Joe Rogan you can't just hear anytime, any place, which I guess I should sort of be thankful for, because I do feel we are, shall we say, a bit inundated with him.
Is that part of his Faustian bargain, by the way? Is News Radio kept off the air so that he could exist in this current form? Because if News Radio Joe Rogan existed in this universe, I think he'd be a lot more palatable.
I mean, you and I are alone on an island here. Obviously, everybody else finds him palatable to the extreme.
The man was hot, okay?
Oh, he was like the hot one on that show. Yeah.
I would go on that podcast.
I'm sure he's constantly banging at your door, wanting to get your opinions on whatever, Potomac.
But I really enjoyed Dana Carvey being on this episode of SNL, as well as Maya Rudolph, because they are two of my favorite SNL cast members. And they are, I believe, the exception to that thing when people online are always clamoring for someone from the past or a celebrity to come and play a politician on the show. There's always that fan casting element for just anybody who pops up. It's sort of this memification of politics that annoys me, where you'll see a random person from a debate, or you'll see J.D. Vance's wife, and it's, well, Mindy Kaling should play her.
Oh, you know, and they just leap to the stunt casting, yeah.
Leap to the stunt casting, but also, why do you immediately leap to, we have to amplify this random person and make them part of popular culture?
It's also just so interesting because obviously the urgency to absorb comedy that SNL provides is a little bit hampered by the fact that now, once we get the news in life, we also immediately get all the jokes from everybody online. Like, so when people are still like anxious to see like a sketch send up of the news, it's always so funny to me because obviously if you're online anyway, and you are, if you're one of these people begging for fan casting, you've already heard all the jokes you want to hear, right? Like, why do you think SNL provides some extra balm for this situation? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe why I enjoyed the Family Feud sketch just a bit more, because it was a fun way to do a debate sketch.
It was out of left field. It wasn't just dutiful. Yes, right, exactly. It wasn't the approach that AI would have just given you.
And I think that is sort of what you have to do in this day and age, where every joke that you would expect about the debate has already been online.
Precisely. Yeah. Yes, exactly. No kidding. And they're unavoidable jokes too. Everybody has seen them.
And we've crossed the point now where it's just maybe you've heard them and your parents haven't heard them. You know, it's people who are watching SNL, even people who might not be extremely online, have heard some variation of these jokes by the time they are watching SNL.
Yes,
so
certainly.
You have to give out of left field comedy. And I think that Dana Carvey, Maya Rudolph, those people are the kind of SNL performers who are going to give you that. Will Ferrell, Cheri Oteri, those are people who are just weird. You know, I appreciate their comedy.
You're right. There's a legitimate weirdness to Cheri Oteri. Again, I always describe it as a riskiness to what she does, because these are characters, whoever she plays, who look you in the face and their pupils are chattering. Like something is seriously the matter with them. You don't want to hold eye contact. I've always appreciated the risk factor she brought. And I feel the same way about Molly Shannon. All of her characters were that achingly real, like, they want attention, and yet they have no understanding of social graces. And so you're watching someone sort of flounder, and yet also kind of having a weird, strange nerd charisma, too. I really cherish her. Also, Molly Shannon, along with Kristen Wiig, two of the best actors to come from SNL, I think. Like, I really think they bring a bracing quality to the silver screen. And literally, if both of those people were confined to dramatic roles for the rest of their lives, I think they would still be amazing.
Molly Shannon on the other two was the star of that show for me.
And also she was in the movie Other People, which I think nobody has seen now, also by Chris Kelly, who created the other two. That is a pure dramatic performance, a tragic performance, and it could be no one but her. I can't think of an actor in previous generations who just has that immediately palpable human, like achingly empathetic quality that she has.
You know what's so funny? I recently rewatched Never Been Kissed, and she's funny in that movie in a thankless role.
Yeah, she's in a movie called Year of the Dog where she was fabulous too.
Speaking of Cheri Oteri as well, I was thinking about how, remember Rachel Dratch was originally supposed to play Jenna in 30 Rock.
Correct.
And we've discussed this before.
You can see the pilot with her in it, yes.
Yes, and Rachel Dratch seems more like someone who would have been Liz Lemon's friend in Second City.
Right.
But obviously Jane Krakowski fits the character of Jenna more for the series. You know who would have been a weird blend of both versions of that character? Cheri.
Yes, because she has the like frazzled, recently electrocuted vibe that Jenna has, and yet also feels like a hardened, stomp the boards improv person.
And it's kind of gorgeous.
Yes, right. And I think like 1'7", like a very short person. That's something I appreciate about Andy Cohen. He like brings her back to do her version of Barbara Walters every once in a while, which is still so funny. And you know I'm a Gilda stan. I stan everything Gilda Radner ever did, except for her simply awful films. Oh, Gilda Radner. I can't believe that's what you gave us. Haunted Honeymoon. Oh, I'm in pain. Oh, my God. Moving on. Cheri Oteri's version of Barbara Walters is such a harder, more interesting take than Gilda Radner's. And I hope people revisit it. And also, I hope people remember who Barbara Walters was, because I feel like our cultural memory of her is already fading.
Yeah, and you cannot bring up The View on SNL without also bringing up, I mean, we remember him more for 30 Rock at this point, but Tracy Morgan was obviously one of SNL's best cast members. And Tracy Morgan as Star Jones.
Another person who has to be explained to people. People do not remember the word Star Jones.
The way that he would say, allegedly, as Star Jones, because when you explain Star Jones to people, you have to explain the fact that she was a lawyer. And whenever she would discuss gossip on the show, she would always bring up the fact that she was a lawyer, and she would always throw out the word allegedly so that they wouldn't get sued.
Right, yes. Another thing I loved about those old View sketches, they really tapped into Barbara just being completely condescending to whoever the youngest person in the cast was, telling Debbie Metnopoulos to get into her cage. By the way, I was just thinking about Debbie Metnopoulos, former View cast member from season 1, and I'll tell you why. A clip of The Masked Singer came up recently, which I believe Paula Cole was on The Masked Singer, and she sounds...
I don't want to wait.
Of the same, yes, For Our Lives to Be Over. Yes, that Paula Cole. Great singer, sounded great. But the panel on The Masked Singer is still the same from like season 1. Like it's still Robin Thicke, it's still Jenny McCarthy. And my question is, who the fuck knows what Jenny McCarthy is from anymore? I mean, like, do people remember, one, Singled Out, two, like her Playboy days? Do people remember like her sitcom? It's very shocking to me. To me, it's like if Debbie Metnopoulos stumbled into getting $8 million a year on primetime.
I don't even think people remember Jenny McCarthy from Scream 3.
No, right. By the way, great scene. Maybe one of the best scenes in Scream 3. Yes.
I mean, why would you give up that gig?
Absolutely. Hold on with both hands. Excuse me.
You will pry that from Robin Thicke's dead hands.
Right.
I mean, and the way his career went, he's glad to have The Masked Singer.
No, I mean, it's shocking that he has this golden parachute. I mean, I guess I don't really know what they're being paid. And of course, Nicole Scherzinger is still a part of it too. I'll be seeing Sunset Boulevard in 2 weeks, by the way. Get ready for that review.
Oh, I can't fucking wait.
Back to SNL, sorry. Phil Hartman is always brought up as one of the great SNL cast members of all time. First of all, he was there for a long time. But two, he was the rare person who... One, was hot. Let's just start there. Like a good looking, but he could both play Frank Sinatra and then also have the real life kind of gravitas of a crooner too. He was a versatile character actor who like was not a scene stealer a lot of the time. He was like a glue guy on SNL, but then could play a broad character. And then also there was just a general warmth to him that, puts him in line with someone like Gilda Radner. There's not too many cast members like that where there's an actual kind of coziness to them. And I feel like that's, I think, a part of why people value him a lot.
Yeah, I don't think we've really had another Phil Hartman.
No. The dependability, like the dad of the show, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in a way Kenan sort of fit that role, but I feel like Kenan fit that role in roles that he played outside of SNL.
Though, of course, like, no disrespect to Kenan, who is, like, the hardest working man in SNL history. I mean, he's been there, like, 175 years at this point.
Yeah. Anyway, SNL.
I think we covered most of it. Yeah. If you have favorite cast members and also favorite performances by cast members in movies, bring them out. I will tout Kristen Wiig's mid-2010s performances, not just Bridesmaids, which is 2011, but Welcome to Me, I loved her in. I loved her in Skeleton Twins. Diary of a Teenage Girl. Her performances are some of my favorite of any SNL alum.
Okay. And Phil Hartman didn't have that many performances in films.
Yeah, Jingle All the Way comes to mind.
Oh, I mean, that film is a classic.
To whom? You? Yeah.
To me.
Okay. Go ahead and own that.
Come on. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sinbad.
Sinbad.
Three Titans.
Names,
Three Titans.
A name I want to hear 3 times as often. Sinbad.
That is when we had movie stars, okay?
By the way, when you watch Sinbad's old stand-up specials, like the one where he's wearing like a puffy orange suit and a blue vest, okay, now you can dress like that again. It's like time to dress like Sinbad again.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Spike Lee wears to Knicks games.
I really should take more cues from him.